to Halftime TV viewers and subscribers. Naranda Brown here, your host, and today I'll be going through some notes that I made throughout the Reggae Boys campaign. Their push to qualify for their first World Cup since 1998. Where did it go wrong? I'll be going into this and more throughout this episode. And please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any comments, any feedback whatsoever, leave it in the comment section as well. Before I go any further, let me say thank you to my sponsors, Quicklink Shipping, RS Sports Store, and CSA Shop. And again, the link will be in the description to each of them. You can go ahead and follow Quicklink Shipping. Anything you want whatsoever shipped into Jamaica, they have you covered at best prices. RS Sports Store for all your sporting clothing and apparel, they have you covered as well. So check out RS Sports Store and Quicklink Shipping on Instagram, folks. And remember, again, just let them know Halftime TV sent you, and you will have a special deal over there. All right, so let's get to it. I've made note of 5 pointers, possibly 6, that I think are the causes of this failed campaign. But before I go into that, the game against Honduras, I think it was a good showing by the Reggae Boys, albeit Honduras is the worst team in CONCACAF. The Reggae Boys, they're the second worst team, and the record, it reflects that. Going into this game tonight, had Paul Hall failed to win, it would have been an embarrassment, really, because even Theodore Whitmore, throughout his stint in these World Cup qualifiers, the Honduras game is the only game he won. So we expected this one to be a Reggae Boy victory. Theodore Whitmore last year, he won this one over in Honduras, I think 2-0. And again, we're seeing a similar scoreline, albeit Honduras getting on the score sheet as well tonight. So a good showing. Does this justify, or does this mean Paul Hall should get the job? I don't think so. I think this is, if it's an audition, I won't say Honduras is a competent opponent for us to judge Paul Hall's capabilities as a manager, and as a manager to lead the team forward by. So I don't think this would be a fair assessment of him, considering the quality of the opposition he was up against. All the other teams that are remotely good in any way, once they can put a few passes together, he has failed to win against them. So I don't think this justifies it. If they were going to give Paul Hall a permanent contract, I think it should be a short-term one, just to see his intentions. He came in a high-pressure situation where the Reggae Boys were almost already out of the World Cup qualification process. They were out of the running. He oversaw a few games, only one of his 7 games in charge of the Reggae Boys. So again, I don't think that's enough to guarantee him a place as permanent manager, permanent head coach of the Jamaican team. I don't think he's the one to take the Reggae Boys forward to ensure that we get to another World Cup. I just don't see Paul Hall as that person as yet. His managerial credentials, they don't stand out. I think he still has a lot to learn, and that's not saying he's a bad manager. It's just saying he's not there as yet. He's not the person we need to be relying on to take the team to the next step. But nonetheless, I think a short-term contract would be ideal in this particular case, if we are willing to give Paul Hall a stab at it. After all, we gave Theodore Whitmore, so it doesn't really get any worse than that, and Theodore Whitmore didn't do a bad job, considering all things no. All right, so I will now go into the details as to why I think the Reggae Boys failed to qualify for the World Cup in Qatar, 2022 World Cup. This one will be held the latter part of this year. Usually we have summer World Cups, not the case this time around, and we all know it's for obvious reasons. So the first reason, I think, is the lack of foresight. I think Jamaican Football Federation, and I have to lay the blame at the feet of the JFF, because we've had so many promising youngsters coming through the ranks from schoolboy football, from the Red Stripe Premier League, yet they're falling through the cracks. We have failed these youngsters. We've failed to put them through. They've gone through the under 13 level, the under 15 level, the under 17 level, yet they cannot make that break into the senior team. And I think that is something that needs to be looked into. Whenever we see someone who is 24, 23 represent the Reggae Boys, we're astonished. People are saying, okay, it's good to see youngsters coming into the national setup. These aren't youngsters coming in at 23, 24. You should be at the prime of your career. So being considered a youngster, and when I hear it, it's so frustrating because you're watching international football. And a lot of folks who subscribe to the channel as well, they consume a whole lot of club football, and some of the best players, some of the biggest standouts in the best leagues. You participate in the English Premier League. We watch the Bundesliga. We watch the Spanish league. We watch all these leagues, right? And then we see youngsters coming through. Diego Lainez, for example, who plays for Mexico. Hervin Lozano, he's been representing Mexico for the longest while. And all these guys, we see them and we admire them, and we're like, okay, that's a promising youngster. That's not the case. Christian Pulisic, for example, over in the United States team, just what, 23 going 24, I think, and he's captain in his team. He's been representing the United States for the longest while, and yet he's not seen as a youngster. He's seen as a seasoned professional. So why then are we still regarding 23 and 24 years old as youngsters? I think, again, it's a lack of foresight because we don't have the vision to bring through the youngsters from 17, from 18, to give them the opportunity. Seeing Jude Bellingham star in the midfield for England at 18 years old, it's remarkable. When do we get to that level? And I'm not comparing the football system and the football facilities and resources in Jamaica to that of England. I'm saying we too have had promising youngsters who we failed because we don't want to give them the opportunity. We're not brave enough to give them the opportunity. We're not looking ahead. We're thinking in the now. And when it comes to football and football development, especially as a nation, we need to think ahead. We can't be thinking in the now. And this brings me to my next point, because again, we are a nation who are all for quick fixes, and that lack of foresight has resulted into us scrambling for a quick fix all the time. Whenever it's time to assemble a team, we're trying to recruit the best players available all over the world, and we're neglecting the players that we have at our doorsteps. And that's not to say I don't want international players, international base players, English based players, or MLS players to come into the national setup. I do. I wholeheartedly do. I want them to come in. I want the best players who can represent Jamaica to be a part of the system, but I don't want it to be our sole supplier. I don't want it to be the only thing that we can call on whenever we need a team to be assembled. Every time the Reggae Boys, whether it's going to a tournament, whether it's to assemble a squad to be competitive, we are over-reliant on foreign talent, right? We're over-reliant on foreign talent, and that is because we lack the foresight to bring through some of the youngsters that we've had, promising youngsters who've gone through the system, the under 13, the under 15, the under 17. They've gone through all these different ranks, and yet they've failed to make the grade into the senior team. We need to work on that, and I think 2026 is not so far away. If we start now, we can get it right. Some of the youngsters who are currently playing in schoolboy football, we saw Paul Hall giving some youngsters the opportunity. It's good to see. We love to see it, but we want to see it more. We want it to become customary. We want it to become a practice, because if we are to build a football program that is to be competitive and to remain competitive, this is how we need to do it. This is how we need to approach it, because not all the time we're going to have access to foreign players who will willingly come to play for Jamaica. Sometimes Jamaica is going to be their second choice, right? And we've seen it before, where players are waiting on the call up from other countries because they qualify to play for other countries. They're waiting on that call up. And if we are resting all our laurels in that basket, then we've gone wrong. And we will be gravely disappointed come 2026 if that is the method that we're going to take again. If that is the approach that we're going to take again, we will be disappointed come 2026. My next pointer, I think the manager played a key role in Jamaica's failure to qualify for the World Cup. And folks, will come on here and they'll say, you folks, you pundits or you YouTubers, you're constantly bashing Theodore Whitmore. No, you don't have Theodore Whitmore to bash. You don't have Theodore Whitmore to criticize and all of that. But and I say this, a big but. When he does well, we give him all the credit. So why not then can't we blame him when he does wrong? I think as objective individuals or some individuals who are seeking to achieve a level of objectivity, we should be allowed to offer constructive criticism. And if a manager has failed a team, then you need to come out and say a manager has failed a team. And it's the same thing with players. And I think a lot of folks on YouTube, because they're friends or because they're associates with players and with managers, they don't want to say certain things because they're afraid that they'll hurt the feelings of these individuals. How then do you expect people to consider what you're saying credible? If you are coming on this platform, YouTube or whatever it is that you're broadcasting on, you are one of those persons. You are one of the gatekeepers, right? You are responsible for relaying information out there to the public. People can't take you serious if every time you come on here, you're trying to be biased, you're trying to take sides, or you're sugarcoating stuff. And I'm not saying folks need to be disrespectful. No, I'm totally against disrespecting professionals in their capacity as professionals. But you need to call a spade a spade. And if the manager failed, you need to come out and say the manager failed. I don't want folks coming and telling me but this and but that. No, it doesn't make any sense. And I think Theodore Whitmore, after the Gold Cup elimination, he should have been relieved of his duties. That is my opinion. And the first set of results in the World Cup qualification process, it justified my opinion. And I said this before the World Cup qualification started, and folks were saying, oh, you're bashing Theodore Whitmore and he has this win percentage and he's at this record throughout whatever time. Means nothing to me, right? Means nothing to me. What means something is qualification for the World Cup. What means something is winning the Gold Cup with a crop of players that he had at his disposal. What means something is establishing a system of play that is not over-reliant on individual brilliance, because that's what we've been relying on most of the time. Theodore Whitmore has been at the helm of the Reggae Boys team. As I said before, I don't think Paul Hall is the one to take us forward, but that doesn't mean Theodore Whitmore did brilliant. Theodore Whitmore was not great for the Reggae Boys, and especially throughout these World Cup qualification games, he basically dug us into a hole that it was almost impossible for us to get out of. And although I think changing managers midway was a bad idea, I think Theodore Whitmore should in fact have been relieved of his duties. I think changing managers, when we switched managers, it was already too late. And as I mentioned before in my statement, I think he should have been relieved of his duties after the Gold Cup elimination. That wasn't the case, and at that point, I ultimately gave up on any hope of qualifying for the World Cup, because if the Reggae Boys had gotten to the World Cup, I can't see them win. I couldn't see them winning a game at the World Cup. That's how bad it was under Theodore Whitmore. And they'll say, okay, but he won this number of games and he won. Again, just watching the games that Theodore Whitmore was in charge of was painful. And again, considering he was in charge of the team so long, it's embarrassing, because as a manager with any idea, with any foresight, any knowledge whatsoever of footballing tactics, you should be able to relay it. Even if the players aren't grasping it, if you're at the helm for 4 years, folks looking in from the outside, they should at least have an idea of what you're trying to do, because the players, they may not master it, and I think my next point will tie into this said reason why players may not master it. But we should see at least glimpses, at least a snippet, something. We should see something that indicates that, okay, this is what the manager is trying to do. Probably the players at his disposal aren't able to execute it well enough. However, this is what he intends on doing, and we can see the direction in which he was heading. At no point whatsoever were we in that predicament where we sat back and we saw a style of football that we actually understood, or we could we could discuss with our peers. No. And again, it's all down to Theodore Whitmore. I think he was out of his depth, and again, I can't even bash him too much. I'll say the manager contributed to us not making the World Cup, but again, it's almost as if you're asking, how do I put this? You're asking a cricketer, a fast bowler, to come keep goal for a team. It just, it's out of his capacity. If he saves one, fine. But if he doesn't save any whatsoever, you can't be disappointed, because it is totally out of his capacity as a fast bowler. So again, I won't dwell on that too much. I'll move on to my next pointer. And I think, again, as I said, the next pointer ties into the one that I just mentioned, the players. Throughout this World Cup qualification campaign, I think we've been all over the place with players, whether it be availability, whether it be COVID. We've struggled to form a core group of players that we could say, okay, these are the players that we're going to use as the core, and then we're going to add players, add individuals where we need to add. No, it's always chopping and changing, chopping and changing. And as such, even if there was a system, it would be difficult for players coming in, players going out, no consistency whatsoever as it relates to the play. I think the only consistent players we've seen throughout the campaign have been Damian Lowe and maybe Andre Blake. The others, it's been in and out, in and out. We saw 2 brilliant games from Leon Bailey, but for the rest of the games, it was almost as if when he did play, it was almost as if he was a fish out of water. And again, it's the level of consistency, building a core group of players that you're going to say, okay, these are the guys that we're going to work with. If there is someone that's doing well at the club level or whatever, you add that player in based on the form that they're showcasing at the club level. But you should at least have an idea of a core group of players. It can't be a case where every time we're going into an international tournament or every time an international game comes up, we're scouting. It doesn't work like that. You can't be scouting when it's time for international tournament. When you're scouting, it should be, okay, we need a right back, or we need a left back, or we need a right winger, we need a striker. So you're scouting for a striker. There's no way you're scouting for an entire team when it's time for a tournament. That doesn't make any sense. And I got the impression that that's what was happening with the Jamaica football team, because we were constantly getting players in, and then he played one game and then he wasn't available for the next 2-3 games, and then someone else comes in and plays 2 games, and then so it was a lot of back and forth, and I think we struggled to form a level of cohesion and consistency, and it was shown on the field of play. We could see it. It's just one of those things, and I think we need to work on that if we are going to be successful in the next campaign. The next campaign, I think it will be slightly easier than this one, because a number of teams from this region will have already qualified automatically based on the fact that they'll be hosting it. But nonetheless, we still need to give a good account of ourselves, and we cannot take this for granted. We cannot consider it a shoe-in, because that is not the case. All right, moving on. I think, and I have to laugh, because this is the final point I have on the topic, and then I'll close it off here and leave you, the viewers, to leave your comments in the comment section, and your feedback as well in the comment section, because it's not only with football, but with everything in general. As Jamaicans, we tend to make excuses instead of find solutions. And again, that's the impression I got throughout this World Cup campaign. Whenever something went wrong, it was always forming an excuse. This is the reason why. This is the reason why. This is the reason why. And I'm on here now, and I'm giving you reasons, but they're not excuses, because they don't justify the Jamaica national team not qualifying for the World Cup. I think we need to step away from that, and the managers, the folks at the JFF, they need to step away from the excuse mentality. They're constantly coming out, they're constantly making excuses, but I've never heard once a member from the JFF or a member from the coaching team, Paul Hall or Theodore Whitmore, any of the coaches come out and actually provide solutions. Paul Hall mentioned something close to a solution the other day when he lamented that he wanted to bring through youngsters, etc. He mentioned that it wasn't about winning it, it was about finding a style of play and that sort of thing. Sounds good. Sounds good. And blessings to everyone who's on here. Wun blessings, Liverpool, DJ Liverpool, Romain, blessings as well. But as I said, we need to step away from the excuses mentality. If we constantly make excuses, there won't be any time whatsoever to find the solutions. And when we rest in excuses, then we get comfortable because we feel as if it is justified. Failure is justified. We didn't do well, but this is the reason why we didn't do well. And folks are happy with that. Folks feel comfortable going to bed and saying, okay, this is the reason we didn't do well, and all is well and all is fine because I can explain myself then. No, I think we need to step away from that and going into the next World Cup qualification campaign. That is something the Jamaica Football Federation and the Jamaican team, they also need to look into. They need to look into themselves. They need to internalize, because this campaign was a total disaster. And I mentioned the number of reasons that I thought contributed towards the failure of this campaign. But now they need to find a solution. They need to fix this campaign. They need to right the wrongs from this campaign and look ahead. They need to think about what we're going to do for the 2026 World Cup. What are we going to do? 1998 is almost a lifetime ago, and yet we're still waiting. We still haven't seen a team that is even remotely close to the 1998 team. Now, I did an interview with Damian Lowe a few months ago. Yeah, I did an interview with Damian Lowe a few months ago, and he lamented, and I quote, "I think this team is Jamaica's golden generation." That's exactly what, and you guys can check out the interview as well. It's on my YouTube channel. It's on my page. You can scroll down. I think it was maybe August or July, one of those months last year. But nonetheless, he said he thought this was Jamaica's golden generation. It was one of the best group of players. It was one of the best group of players that we've actually put together. So why then are we not competing in Qatar 2022? Why then will the players be watching the World Cup from their sofas and from their living rooms? That's something we need to think about. That's something we need to assess. We need to actually conceptualize what he said and what actually transpired throughout this World Cup qualification campaign. Because if this is the best group of players that we've assembled in such a long time, then they should be competing. They should be at least competitive. We finished second to bottom. Second to bottom. We're the second worst team in CONCACAF. And it's not because I hate or I have any grudge against the Reggae Boys. It's because it's a fact. The results state that, right? So even if you're of the opinion that, okay, El Salvador, we're a better team than El Salvador, we're a better team than Costa Rica, that's an opinion. That's an opinion. But what statistics and what facts do you have to support that opinion? I have the CONCACAF octagon, the table right now, to support my statement and my opinion that the Reggae Boys team is the second worst team in CONCACAF. And based on the individual talent that was at the disposal of the coaches and of the Jamaica Football Federation, then that should not have been the case. That should not have been the case. We should have been doing far better than we actually did. So why then did we end this campaign in such a disappointment? These are things that need to be looked into. These are things that need to be researched. We need to get some answers. We need to hear something from the Jamaica Football Federation or the coaches or something. They need to put some information out there, because if I am to go through the list of players that represented Jamaica throughout the World Cup qualification process this time around, a number of those players would actually make it into a top 10 team in England. They would, right? A number of those players would make it into top MLS teams. A number of those players are actually playing for top MLS teams. A number of those players are actually playing for top teams in England. So why then have we been so atrocious? Why then have we been so abysmal throughout this World Cup qualification campaign? These are genuine questions, and they may sound hilarious and they may sound as if I'm criticizing and I'm being harsh. No, I'm not. I'm just asking some questions that actually warrant answers. Because if we have a team with Mikel Antonio and Ravel Morrison and Leon Bailey, Andre Blake, one of the, not the best goalkeeper in MLS, why then have we been struggling so much throughout the World Cup qualification campaign? It's funny. It's funny because you don't expect that from a Jamaican team with so much talent, with so much star players. All right, so maybe we need to step away from focusing on those star players and focus more on actually building a team. Right? Together, everyone achieves more. Focus more on building a team. And I mentioned this in one of my previous videos that I did, and I think it was yesterday. We may have good individuals, but we need to focus on building a good team, because a lot of the Jamaicans are still in the Brazil mindset where you have one standout player, you have two standout players, and it's almost as if game plan, get the ball to these players. No, we need to focus on building a proper team. And when I mentioned the coach before, but again, we as Jamaicans as well, we are tied to the mentality that we need a star player, or two star players. We can actually have 11 average players, that can do far better than a team with 2 or 3 star players. 11 average players, but they operate as a unit, and each person knows their role, and they're looking out for each other. They're covering for their teammates. They're getting the job done, because that is what you go out there to do, to get a job done. And if you realize that one of your teammates is falling short, then it is your job to cover for that individual, because at one point you are going to need that individual to cover for you as well. And that's why it is a team, right? That's why it is a team and not 11 individuals. It is a team. You don't consider it 11 individuals, you consider it a team, right? And again, I think that's something we genuinely need to look into, because for the longest while we've been in the mindset where we need 2 or 3 star players, and when those star players come in, it's almost as if they're isolated, because we're working so hard to kick the ball long to get it to these players so they can work their magic. Little build-up play, nothing at all as it relates to cohesion and cohesiveness. We're just all over the place until it gets to those star players, and then they work a bit of magic because of their quality, and then the results indicate that, okay, Jamaica won 1-0 or Jamaica won 2-0, and then folks are flabbergasted because Jamaica is amazing and we're doing exceptionally great because the results indicate that we won 2-0 or 1-0. Not the case, folks. And I've watched all the games that the Reggae Boys have played for the last maybe 4 or 5 years. I've watched every single one of them. I've watched all the games under Theodore Whitmore, and again, it's the same thing that keeps recurring. It's the same questions that continue to pop up. The same questions are being asked, and again, none of these questions have answers. Let me know if you have the answers to these questions, and I'll leave it at that for tonight. Remember, leave your comments in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. Noranda Brown here from HalftimeTv. And also, remember, check out my sponsors. Quick Link Shipping, RS Sports Store, and CSA Shop. Quick Link Shipping, anything you need whatsoever shipped into Jamaica, they have you covered. Check them out on Instagram at Quick Link Shipping. RS Sports Store, it's coming down to the crunch time of the season. Liverpool, Manchester City, they'll be going head to head to wrap up this season. But RS Sports Store, they have the kits for you for all your favorite teams in England and across Europe, as a matter of fact. CSA Shop, be free, be confident, all your clothing and apparel needs. Check out CSA Shop. and they ship island wide as well. Miranda Brown here again, folks, from Halftime TV, saying until next time, sleep well, take good care of yourselves, and the Reggae Boys are heading home. Well, they're already home. Bye bye.